I'm Leo Warder for Kit Guru, and this is DeepCool QuadStellar. It is an enormous chassis arranged in 4 cabins, hence the quad. It's obviously based in some part on the TriStellar we saw a good long while ago, but this is completely different. It's far more sophisticated. It's also rather expensive. In the UK, £418, £349 plus VAT. But you get one huge amount of chassis for your money. It can accommodate an E80X motherboard, multiple graphics cards, a colossal number of hard drives. The list of features goes on, and look, you got some cutesy RGB as well, plus there's another little secret which I'll show you in a moment or two. It has a lot going on, but we have to first remove these 4 metal cabins so you can see inside. And with the 4th cabin removed, you can see the QuadStellar stripped down in all its glory. The cabins are not identical, they're handed. They've each got one of these smoked glass windows, which is retained by some really strong magnets. So let's just pull that off. Actually, when I received the QuadStellar, a couple of the magnets had been pulled off with the glass. I had to stick them back on to... Actually, it's one of these. Yeah, that one there. It's got my dab of glue on it. So the windows are arranged such you can actually see something interesting on these faces, but you could, if you chose to rejig the cabins, I cannot think why you do it, have the windows sort of on the wrong faces, out of sight, kind of showing the solid surface. I just can't see why you do that. The 2 upper cabins are like this, and the 2 lower have these rubber feet, but they are the same piece of hardware, and they're slightly flexy because obviously they're just a piece of sheet that's been bent around and around. Nice piece of metal work actually, and they slide on, but you have to kind of spring them open to get them into place. And as we can see, the glass is quite heavily tinted, but you can see inside quite well, as you'll see in the B-roll. So the spec of the case, essentially it can accommodate any hardware you choose. That's just broadly speaking. It's E80X, expansion slots because it's double decker. You can put the graphics cards up on PCI Express risers, or you can put them down natively on the motherboard. Means that the expansion slots 8 plus 6, would you believe? So if your motherboard supports 4 graphics cards, they can go in there. The only thing is you only get the one PCI Express riser cable card type setup. If you want to have more than one graphics card on a riser in the upper compartment, then you'll need to get another cable or 2. In this day and age, realistically, SLI is pretty much dead crossfire. One graphics card seems to suit most of us. I just cannot see this as a limitation. It does, on the other hand, mean those expansion slots are just correct. 14 expansion slots, 8 native to the motherboard, 6 up top. What are they for? Realistically, they're not going to be used. It's a similar situation with the fan mounts, where you've got 6 120s at the front, a 120 at the rear, and you can do some bits and pieces at the side. 120 units only, not 140s. That strikes me as something of a limitation, if only from the point of view of the hardware you happen to have around. Plenty of 280mm coolers on the market, or 240 is perfectly adequate in most applications. This is a 360 I've got installed. I'll come to that shortly. But the option of using 140s would strike me as a good one. You can't. You have to go with 120s. As supplied, you get 5 DeepCool TF120 fans, 4 at the front, 1 at the rear. The one at the rear, curious enough, is at the back of the drive storage area, rather than, as you might think, with the graphics card. But then if you happen to populate the storage area with a whole bunch of drives, that might be a bright idea. But in terms of how many drives, so you get no 5 1/4 optical drives. Not a great surprise. I mean, how on earth would an optical drive fit into this setup anyway? Internal drive bays, 8 3.5 2.5s or 5 2.5s. Essentially all the drives you could possibly imagine. But I'm looking here at an array of drive caddies. I've got a single M.2 SSD running this system here. I can't imagine myself using 1 or maybe 2 of those drive caddies. 8, I just don't see it. Interestingly, this one here is to show off your bestest, most purtiest SSD. It's quite a neat idea. So you've got the whole DeepCool logo kind of displayed, obviously because of the glass being on top. A neat idea. How many SSDs look so gorgeous you're gagging to show them off? Different matter. But nonetheless, why the heck not? What's the main feature? So the case is divided up. We've got storage, graphics, power supply, and then around there the main compartment. So in that sense, it's all very sensibly arranged. The TriStellar, which obviously this harks back to, had each compartment very much separated, hence it was mini ITX. This looks like it's separated compartments, but it's not really. There's quite a large sort of central spine running through, which means that you can fit the eATX motherboard in without any hardship. You can feed cables from one compartment to the other, again without too much hardship. It looks like it's 4 separate compartments, but not so. The best way I find to consider the QuadStellar is not as this kind of alien bug-eyed sort of insecty front panel on an X-shaped chassis. X-shaped. Instead, if you rotate it 45 degrees, so this is the vertical, this is the horizontal, then the power supply is in the bottom, the eATX motherboard goes on the horizontal, the storage is at the side, and the graphics cabin is up top and vertical. It doesn't make the layout any more logical, because when all said and done there isn't any logic to this chassis. It's about aesthetics and styling primarily, but the fact is you can hurl a huge amount of hardware inside it, and when you look at it in the sort of X-shaped layout, it's like, what on earth is going on? The front panel has a huge amount of aesthetic about it. So we've got the RGB in the front along with the Gamer Storm DeepCool logo, which again is RGB, and that is also the power button. There is no reset button. That kind of made the thing asymmetric, and that wouldn't do, would it? So one button, and it's RGB, and it's got their logo, and then we have these 4 shapes is the only way of describing them. They're not windows, there's nothing to see behind them. In fact, what's behind them are the fans. The I/O panel is here, and that's a really conventional I/O, 2 USB 3.0s, headset jacks, that's it. But these panels do rather more than you might expect. If I press a button here on my phone, they open. And then if I just get a little screwdriver just to winkle out this filter that's behind this one here, magnetically retained over one of the inlet fans. It's very neat. And I put that back in and I close the inlets down. They've got a little bit of a sort of a fun and game scene going on. Apart from that, it's quite noisy. I've got 2 custom modes. They call it self-inspection. Essentially, it's so they can show it off at shows such as CES and Computex. Let's just go with custom mode 2. And the 4 inlets kind of salute at you. All jolly good fun, I think we can agree. The sense behind these panels is that once it shuts up, is when they're closed down, it looks neat and tidy. If on the other hand the system starts to get hot, they need to open. The temperature is set to automatically open when they hit 40 degrees. The point of those panels at the front is that when you're using the system, it might start to get hot, in which case it needs to flow more air. You can see now they're closed down, the airflow through those fans and through those filters is non-existent. However, the chassis does leak air. If I take this cabin here and we look there, we can see quite clearly air's leaking in all around that window there. So there's going to be something curious going on with the internal pressure. That's just an absolute fact. RGB control, fan control, and the rest of it through this app it's painful actually. It's painful because the connection method is not very carefully spelled out by DeepCool, but what you have to do is install the DeepCool app, like so, on your phone. You want 2.4 gigahertz, not 5 gigahertz for your Wi-Fi setup. You need a router, and I've got a router physically here, which is your phone connects to the router, and then it scans any attached devices, in this instance the DeepCool QuadStellar. It finds the device, it connects. All sorts of annoyances there. You need to have the router close to the device to make it all work. Why it can't do point-to-point, better yet Bluetooth, is beyond me, but there we have it. Also, you have to have encryption enabled, because the punch in your security code for your Wi-Fi it won't accept a blank code. In other words, you have to have encryption enabled. You can't turn it off to make life easy, which is just peculiar to me. There's no sort of WPS button just to automatically link the thing together. And then it scans and hopefully it finds it, and then you can control it. Once you set fan speeds, and I've got this set to a steady 500 RPM, and you set the RGB how you want it, I've got it set to a rainbow thing, then the settings are stored within the DeepCool QuadStellar. You don't have to constantly connect to change anything, or you do have to constantly connect to change anything, but if you want to keep it like this, that's it, one setup, job done. But I found when I was doing photos and such like, and I was changing various settings and I was opening and closing the front for photos, that I probably had to reset the hardware 6 times. I had to turn the router on and off at least twice. There's a button on the control board which is to reset the unit. It works, but it's not crystal clear that to reset the unit you have to press and hold that button while the system is powering on. You have to hold it for 6 seconds while the system is powering, not just any old time. Once you know that, then you're fine. But it doesn't have a little light to tell you you've done it right. It's really fiddly. And the galling thing is, this is an expensive chassis. It's got some clever ideas, but the controlling software and the Wi-Fi connection aspect of it, it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. So this is a pretty system, no two ways about it. I mean, it's got lots of lighting anyway, but most of the lighting does not actually come with the DeepCool QuadStellar. A great deal of it's been added in by itself when I built the system. Let's rattle through the spec. The CPU is an Intel Core i9-7980XE, that's the 18-core beast. We've got a Rampage 6 Extreme motherboard. The processor is running stock clock, so all cores 3.4 gigahertz. The liquid cooler is DeepCool Captain 360 EX, that's the white RGB version, and that in turn, so the RGB on the pump unit on the processor is part of the liquid cooler, and the 2 RGB strips that are inside the chassis are also controlled by the cooling system. So they're part of that. We've got G.Skill Trident Z DDR4 memory, the RGB version, hence the RGB. And then we've got an EVGA GTX 1080 Ti graphics card, which is possibly the dullest component in the system, but also one of the more effective bits of hardware. And then around in this compartment here, we've got a Seasonic Prime Titanium 600 watt fanless power supply, which is doing a stellar job powering the whole thing. Under one of the covers on the motherboard, we have a Samsung 960 Pro M.2 SSD. So it's a full fat gaming PC, no two ways about it. It looks the part, but the amount of RGB that actually comes with the system is this, and only this. But without the other RGB, it would look quite peculiar. It absolutely needs illumination inside it. Those cabins with their tinted glass panels, if you haven't got lights inside, what the heck is the point? In terms of building a system that had a custom loop, that would be absolutely doable, again provided you stick to 120 units for your fans and your radiators. Now the all-in-one cooler, you have to remove one of these sort of side brackets to give you proper access, take out one of the stock fans, thus put the cooler in place with its 3 fans, fiddle a few wires into place, it's all perfectly okay. It's not entirely straightforward in the sense that to get the cooler into place, because it's on this diagonal, you have to come in from the bottom. You can't come in from the bottom, there's a table in the way, so I ended up putting, as I say, the system as a cross shape, so it's on this point here, and then sliding in from the side. But I was very careful, I was making sure it was supported at all times. I was terrified, frankly, of the thing going crash back, because there's a lot of weight going on here. In terms of styling, it's just, there's nothing else like it. The same was true of TriStellar. This is a better case than TriStellar because TriStellar was quite limiting. Mini ITX, you were limited for space, airflow and such like. This is not just TriStellar plus 33%. The fact it has the sort of the central spine, so you can feed components through more easily and you can connect it all together, and yet you still have the separation of storage, main compartment, graphics card, power supply. That works in exactly the same principle, but it works much better here. However, look at it, it's big. I mean, no two ways about it, it's a big, big chassis. Where would you use it? I mean, it's the precise opposite of a LAN party system. So this is going to be a feature of your home office. It's going to go on your desk. I wouldn't want this next to my TV, not in a million years. Also, the dust is starting to really annoy me. The fact these panels, I'm sure it's a static thing, they just seem to attract dust. This is not a dirty room. There's a load of dust and it all seems to be on those panels there. However, I'll get over that. The features, the control system for these front panels for the fan speed and the automatic temperature monitoring such they'll flip open if it's getting what it regards as toasty, that all works very well. The Wi-Fi connection is not great. In a sense, I have to admire DeepCool for developing their own solution here and making it work fairly well. But as ever, it's that final 5 or 10% that's going to make the difference. It's going to transform it from annoying to pretty darn good. As things stand, if you are a reviewer and you're fairly confident DeepCool fired up the case at their head office and they connected it to their own Wi-Fi network, you're going to have to reset it when it arrives because it's looking for a non-existent SSID. It would help, frankly, if there's some little light or something on the board to tell you what to do. Hey ho, it's a relatively minor detail, but it's very high on my list of frustrations. The limitation to 120mm fan units, I can see why it is like that, because if everything was 140, it would be a lot bigger. Nonetheless, the fact you are limited with your liquid cooling, I'm not best pleased about that. The filtration on the front, but the fact the cabins all leak is not the greatest. It's going to mean you're going to get dust inside the system, I would guess, unless it happens to be positive. No, it has to be drawing air in through those through the cabins. Yeah, it must be. So you're going to get dust inside, but it's not the end of the world. We've seen a similar thing from Corsair quite recently. This is not unheard of. The magnets all over the place, holding on the filters, holding the windows in place and such like. That works well. They're very strong magnets. The overkill with the drive bays and such like, it makes me wonder what the heck they're playing at. But then if they didn't put all these mounts and such like in place, there'd be a load of space. I'll be complaining about that. So the fact they started with, ooh, let's make it 4 cabins and let's have an essential thing so you can have EATX. The rest flows from that. I can see how they've made the decisions they've made and it works well. I'm impressed by the overall chassis. It has to be said, the number of people in the market for this chassis is going to be vanishingly small, but there is no denying it is unique and it's an impressive piece of work, where it's only a few details that stop it from being really good. As it stands, it's good, it's impressive, and it's taken a heck of a long time for us to finally see QuadStellar, but here we are. Yep, like it a lot. If you like this video, thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. If you want more from Kit Guru, click to subscribe. Hit the bell button to get alerts for each new video as it arrives on Kit Guru. Do be sure to visit kitguru.net. I've got some photos over there which show you some really good details of this stunning chassis. I'm Leo Walder for Kit Guru. This is the DeepCool QuadStellar.